Are you having a baby? Are you going to find out if it's a boy or if it's a girl? Or are you going to wait for the time to come and find out then? That's the topic on today's show. I'm joined by Adam Rank. Lots of funny stories coming up on this one. I hope you're going to enjoy it. Hit that subscribe button. It's coming up right after this. Hi guys, Colm here. Welcome back to the Learning to Dad show, the show that brings you on my journey as I head towards parenthood here. Coming up in just a couple of weeks. I can't believe how close it is now. And I'm trying to get as much information as possible. I'm starting to run out of time here to get this information into my mind, into my brain, and be ready to get all things considered, be ready for parenthood. So on today's show, I'm joined by a good friend of mine, and he works for the NFL Network over there in LA, a busy, busy man. And we're not going to be talking football today. We're not going to be talking fantasy football. We're going to be talking all about babies and what we should be doing with them. As a dad in his own right, it is Mr. Adam Rank. Adam, welcome aboard the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and it's an honor. First of all, let me say congratulations to you. It's an exciting time. I know the anxiety that you're going through, but it's going to be good. If I've learned anything about you over doing the pods, listening to the pods, is that you're a sharp young man, and you're going to do just fine.
Hopefully still a sharp young man. Keep the young there in the brackets, heading up towards the 30 years old now, 29 just recently, but I'll a lot of people keep telling me that's very young, anyone that's older than me, so let's see how these years start to really fly in.
My dad was in his 50s when he had me, so you're fine.
Plenty of time. And I guess, Adam, there is congrats in order for yourself as well as we record this one. We're going to be talking all about baby number one, but we have a baby number two on the way.
We do, yeah. We have a baby due. A son is going to be born in August. He's coming along, so I'm pretty sure, most people have known, most people don't know. We haven't been like super hyper about telling everybody, and I know that it's, she's what? It's close to 18 weeks, maybe 20 weeks now, because being here in late March, we're getting close. So if you're listening, if you want to offer me congratulations, and I can't imagine that you'll want to, but be cool about it, just in case there are some people who haven't found out yet, because we didn't do a whole huge thing. But you know what? So we'll keep it between us. But super excited about having the second one come aboard. We're still playing man defense, which I think is the key. Whenever you go from 2 to 3, I think is the big one. So I think for the wife and I think we're pretty content with that we have a boy and a girl. So we're replacing ourselves. We've done our due diligence. That's what we're going to do. I think that's a perfect way to go about. And when she's out there getting, delivering the baby, I might be on the table next to her getting a vasectomy, but whatever. But we're ready to go.
Yeah, those vasectomy stories coming in thick and fast through the Twitter sphere as well, coming my way. And our first guest of the show, Scott Fish, he actually had that procedure done, and he didn't mention it when he was on the show. It was mentioned to me after the show, so that should have been in there in episode 1, but we'll see what happens with Adam. Adam, you mentioned there already, it's a boy with child number 1, and it is a girl, may I add. It is Beverly. Did you find out with your first child if it was a boy or a girl ahead of time? We haven't found out yet, so we're still very much in the dark regarding that one.
Yeah, that's what I would want to do. I think in a perfect world, we wouldn't have found out. We would have had 2 names prepared. We would have gone with a gender neutral kind of situation with the bedroom. But we had to go through the IVF method. We had some problems with conceiving a child. And then once we got to a point where we were doing artificial insemination and things like that, we were having problems carrying to full term, so we had to go IVF, and when we do that, we had to go through genetic testing, which meant that we kind of knew whether it was going to be a boy or girl ahead of time. So, that part of it, that part of the magic was gone, but we're very blessed to have gotten to this point. I know for a lot of people, and I think it's one of the things that nobody really talks about, is that a lot of women have to go through a lot of struggles to get pregnant, and it's something that just people really don't think about, but it's really been a struggle, and it was eye-opening for us, and it's been a tough situation. So if anybody is listening, and anybody who's gone through this, I think there's kind of a fraternity of people who have to go through these kind of things now, and it's getting a little bit more open. So hopefully these women can get some support and realize that it's not their fault, that sometimes you need a little help from Mother Nature, with science and everything like that. So we're fortunate. Listen. I'm not going to complain. Like if the minor complaint is that I had the gender of the baby spoiled, I think that's a minor one. But I envy you that you're able to wait till the last minute. I can't imagine how exciting that would be to not know going into that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Which way are you leaning? Do you want a boy or a girl?
I absolutely have no preference, but one of my friends had a child very recently, in the last 2 weeks, in fact, and it was a boy. And I was thinking, if it was a boy, best friends could grow up together. But then again, maybe if it was a boy and the two of them hated each other, that would affect our friendship as well. So it could work both ways. But I have to say, at the moment, just want everything to go well, want the baby to be healthy, and then after that, I'll take it from there and worry about it. And like you, the goal would be to have one boy, one girl, and then, best of both worlds, and we'd be very happy with that. And I think it's very important to mention on the note that you mentioned there that, we were very fortunate. We had no trouble, conceiving, but a lot of people do have those problems. And you mentioned, there is help there. There's different ways to go about it. And, it can be a very, very daunting time for either a man or a woman or both as they go through that process.
Yeah, and it really, and I think a lot of guys don't understand too. Like, it's tough for you as well. So if there's anybody who's listening to this and anybody who wants more information or want to talk about this, if you need a little support of anything like that, feel free to reach out with me or reach out to me. I'm happy to talk about it and kind of help people out as they go through this. And I do want to also say, because I know that because you don't know whether it's going to be a boy or a girl, and I do know Mike the Miz. Anybody who's a wrestling fan, as you can see, I'm rocking this Bullet Club hat. It's not cold. It's just that the lights are so obnoxious because I'm bald, for people who don't know, that if I didn't have this on, it would look terrible. I'm not trying to make a fashion statement. I mean, I don't mind representing the Bullet Club or anything like that. But when the Miz, he was coming on Fantasy Live, and I joked with him because they had announced his wife was pregnant. And I said, hey, I don't want to know the gender. Don't spoil it for me. And he's like, yeah, okay, like whoever you are, like whatever. And then he's having a girl, she's coming along in a couple. I think she's due on the 6th, so 3 days before you. And I talked to him about it a little bit because I didn't think that it was going to be a problem. But a lot of times it's funny talking to guys who are expecting girls, and how I think most guys publicly always say things like, well, I don't care, it'll be cool. And I'm here to tell you right now that girls are awesome. Even as a macho guy who, all that stuff, girls are so awesome. First of all, they love their daddies. And they also can like the stuff that you like. I mean, my daughter used to love wrestling. And I think what she still kind of does, but I think she loves the entrance music. So she loves like Nakamura. She loves Bobby Roode. She loved Enzo Amore because of his whole sing-along. And she used to do all that kind of stuff. And she also loves baseball, which is very huge to me, just because I've been taking her to baseball games for pretty much her whole life. Like, she was about 3 months old when, let's see, she was born in July, August. Yeah, about 2.5 months old. We took her to her first game, and she's been going to games, and she legitimately likes it. It's not cotton candy or anything like that, but she likes, I strap her in like Carlos from The Hangover. Like, I put her in that little carrier, and we will stand there and watch a full game. So it's cool, and girls are awesome, and they're sometimes nicer. So anybody who's expecting a girl and you're like, oh, a girl, like, it's cool. It literally is cool. And if I had my druthers, if she would have been my only one, that would have been cool. I'm happy to have a boy, obviously. But girls are cool. So anybody who's in that situation, don't fret. You're going to enjoy it because they're awesome.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. When it happens, it happens. I'm probably in the same boat as you mentioned with those other guys. Yeah, I'll be fine. I'm not too worried what it is and but when it happens, then I can't be like, oh well, let's change this. Let's do something about it. So it's just one of those things. I'm just gonna get ready with, and I'll change it. If it's a boy, maybe I'll think that I know everything, and then I'll find out very, very quickly that I don't. But you mentioned, the baseball, you mentioned the wrestling. Of course, everyone's come to this podcast to get their wrestling talk, and that's why we're here talking WWE. But when we talk about children, there's lots of things children, like when I was a child, that's when I started watching, was the WWF at the time, grew up watching guys like Stone Cold, which probably when you're maybe 8 or 9 years old, you probably shouldn't have been watching at the time, but guys like The Rock, The Rock has grown into something of an idol for mine as he's moved on throughout his career as well. With this bookshelf behind me, his autobiography from a long, long time ago, and he's probably an updated one out since that. But we talk about the funny stories, the things growing up, but with your child at the moment, with Beverly, and you're taking her to I see on Facebook at the baseball games. I know you love going to the baseball games, and you mentioned her watching the wrestling. But what are some of the funny stories? Is there any funny stories regarding those subjects that you have regarding Beverly?
Funny because the first time that she started doing Enzo Amore's with the whole and you can't teach that, like doing that whole thing, it kind of just floored me. Like, it was like, oh my gosh, like you hear people talk about it, how they're sponges and like, oh my God, they're sponges. But like when they really start getting into stuff like that. And like one time we were at a baseball game and I was walking through the concourse and there were times where you would walk behind something and she couldn't see the field and she'd start getting fussy. And I'm like, I don't get what she's like, what is she upset about? And then eventually you realize like, oh wait, like she's getting upset because she can't see the game. You're like, oh, she's really internalizing it and doing things like that. And so I always love that. And the one thing though about wrestling, and this is what we should be careful of, is that she loves to do like wrestling type of moves. And so she will get up on the couch and she'll move all the cushions and she'll stand on the couch and then fall face first and like no hands, like she's falling face first into the couch and she bounces and then she gets up and she goes, was that funny? Was that fun? Like, that's the question. That's what she's concerned about. She wants to make sure what she's doing is funny. And you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that she's doing this. And so the fact that she's asking, I go, you're asking the right questions because everything in your life should be centered around, is what I'm doing funny? So I do appreciate that.
And when we look, talking about the wrestling moves, it brings back so many memories for me. My brother's 2.5 years younger than me. I have a lot of friends my age, and we used to just grow up. It was around the time that the WWF at the time started doing the "Do Not Try This at Home" videos.
Yeah,
and, I don't know if they were aimed at us, but there was quite a lot of
specifically.
There's a couple of cassette tapes lying around in my mum and dad's house where we actually stole their video camera. We actually found a field, we recorded, and it just started to get pretty crazy. You're watching guys like Mick Foley and all those sort of things going on.
Yeah.
And so maybe those videos were targeted at us. But when we look then, we're moving kind of through it, traditions, family traditions. I don't know, maybe falling off the couch face first onto the floor is a family tradition in the Rank household. But have you any family traditions started in the 2.5 years with your daughter?
We do. Well, we just brought her into the traditions that we are already doing with ourselves. And I know I'm going back to the baseball well again, but it's something that we can bond over. And so we started we always go to the Angels home opener, and we're always out for that. And so she's been a part of that as well. So every year, if we're Facebook buddies, you'll notice because every year it gets updated. There's always a photo from us. Opening day of the Angels. We'll have photos of that. We are always because we have family in Las Vegas, so we always take her out to see the family in Nevada on her birthday. So we've taken a photo with her at the same spot in Las Vegas for every year, every birthday with her. So she's going to have that hopeful like chronological type thing going on. And then there's when I was a child, my dad would always go out and get us donuts on Sunday morning. It was just like something that he would do. And my wife and I never did that. Like, it was never like a big thing for us. But now that we have the child, and it's tough during football season because you're like, ugh. So, but it's been Saturday mornings now. But now we do like the Saturday morning donut type thing. Like, oh, it's a Saturday morning. And it's the dumb things like that. But it also is something that is carried with you, and we try to think of something to do Christmas wise, of like, whether it's opening presents on Christmas Eve or doing whatever, but we haven't quite nailed down the Christmas one. We do like outside of like going to church or something like that. But yeah, so it's just little things like, little traditions like that just kind of, hopefully that she remembers from her childhood, because she's not going to remember a lot of what's going along right now. Although we sing everything. Like anytime that if we have a diaper song, we have a go to bed song. And this was the crazy thing too, is we have a good night song. When it's time for her to go to bed, I just sing a little thing like, good night, baby. Good night, baby. Good night, baby. It's time to go to bed. It's a little bit more drawn out, but just like the melody of that. So when I was at the Super Bowl a couple months ago, we were doing FaceTime, and I'm like, and my wife's like, oh man, I don't know how I'm going to get her to go to bed. You know, this is the first night. So I started singing it over FaceTime, and she literally jumped off the couch and started just running up the stairs. And like, she could be doing anything. She could be involved because she has a Kindle that she plays with, and I'll start humming the song without the words, and she'll be like, ah, no, she'll protest like, no. I'll grab the Kindle from her, and she starts singing it herself. So, and then if she's tired, she'll start singing it. So I don't know if that's necessarily a tradition, but it's something, that we do.
Yeah, it's definitely anything that you do as a maybe we'll say a family or a pairing, whatever way we want to look at it. We have to include the other halves in this, our better halves. They take all the responsibility of taking the whole child into their body and giving birth to the child. So we have to give them credit. So whatever we can do as fathers to make that bond with you mentioned your daughter, with our children, I think is a very key thing. And I think, you mentioned the thing I thought was interesting there was the picture, having the picture at the same place every year. And it gives you that thing, maybe when she's 18 on her 18th birthday, if you have 18 pictures and a collage or something, that'll be a very interesting one to see. There's just to see the differences over the years. So very, very cool idea. Something that I'm definitely, I think, going to try and steal from you there, Adam, and use it. The only tradition I had like that in my house was my mother used to put us against the kitchen door and do a little line above our heads.
Oh, yeah.
And
do that for sure. Yeah, we have that on our bedroom door.
Yeah. So I grew all the way up to the door is 6'6", and I grew up to 6'6", so the line is literally at the top of the door, and you.
Oh wow! You're that tall? Nice.
Yeah, 6'6". Yeah. So I kind of ran out a little bit of space, but it's always a cool thing. I tell a lot of people about the door and being the height of the door and things like that. But it's just a novelty in our household, if I can get the words out. And when you look at it, it's just about different stories, and everyone's different households. But you've had obviously a great time in the early stages of fatherhood. I hope to have as good a time. But when you started off, obviously like me at this exact moment in time, I'm looking and I'm saying, yeah, this is going to change, that's going to change, little bits and pieces, my life will alter in different ways. But was there anything that you kind of thought, yeah, it's going to go this way, and then there was a massive surprise and you're like, whoa, well, this is just completely different than I thought it was going to be once I got to this point?
It is different because I don't know if you have nieces or nephews. We have a bunch of them.
Zero.
Okay, so we at least had some sort of experience with kids and children. My wife and I have 15 nieces and nephews between my sister and her sister and my sister's daughter and everything like that. So there's a wide range of kids, and I don't know. And it's kind of funny because like I play favorites, and I don't know if that's the way I should be. I don't know if it's weird to have a favorite niece or nephew, but I think it's weird that I rank them on a whiteboard that I update every Monday. That might be a little too much. Well, you got to give them something to shoot for.
You got to make them try and climb that ladder.
Right? And then like when little Wade comes over and he's like, Uncle Buddy, and he calls me Uncle Buddy because I don't give my real name, but I say, listen, I go, and he's like, how? He's like, I don't know. How do I move up this list? And I said, I don't know, but let's just say that beer's not getting out of the fridge by itself. So you give them something to strive for and something to do. But it's different when it's your own child, because at some point, like they have, like most days are great. Like every day is great. And then some days are not going to be like as great. And then you're sitting there looking at your child and you're like, oh my God, you're going to be here tomorrow, aren't you? Like, no. It's no. It's the 24/7-ness of it that I think that as much as you want to prepare yourself for, that as much as you want to be like, I'm ready for this is something I really want. And I think everybody's in this scenario, like, I really want to do this. I'm really having a lot of fun with it, but it's like, it's 24/7 and you cannot take your eye off them for a moment. Like you always, especially when they're super young, you always have to be aware of everything they're doing. Like, and when they're quiet is when you've got to be the most worried. Like, what are you doing? Like, I'll do that. Like, we'll be in the living room. Like, she will just be sitting there hanging out, playing. She'll be coloring or doing something. And I'll be sitting there reading and I'll look, hey, what's going on? And she's like looking at me like I'm a lunatic. She's like, Papa, color. I color. And you're like, okay, sorry about that. So I think that was the biggest surprise. It's not a surprise. It's like the biggest adjustment.
Yeah.
But it's also the biggest surprise to me as well is one of the things that you obviously won't be able to do. And I don't know what your lifestyle was like before this, but we used to go out a lot, spend a lot of time going out to eat, spending our time in public houses and taverns and things like that. And for anything, is that I honestly don't miss it as much as I thought I would. Like, it's not like I don't have a super desire to do. Listen, I still like to do it. There'll be some afternoons that I'll go down and do it. And thankfully, the tap room by my house, that's within walking distance, it's about a half-hour walk, that I can put the baby in the stroller and walk her down, and can walk her and then put her in her, keep her in her stroller. She can have her Kindle, or she can do her thing, and I could go out there and have a pint and then walk home. But the one thing is like how much I don't miss that. Like, it's really been refreshing. Like, you can still have fun, but it's different fun. Like, I now enjoy going out to the park and drinking coffee or whatever it is, and playing on the slide and doing all that stuff. So we're still having fun, but it's just a different kind of fun. And the great thing is you don't wake up hungover because of it. You're just out there having a good time. So that was one of the things. Like, it's terrible to say that that's a surprise, that they're more enjoyable than I thought. But I think a lot of people dread like how much their life changes, and it does. And I'm not going to sit here and BS you, and like, it obviously changes, but at the same point, you can still make the child have to adjust to you. Like, they don't have to dictate everything. Like, they dictate an awful lot. Like, don't get me wrong, but you can also dictate to them too. Like, hey, Lil, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to teach you how to consort yourself at a baseball game. This is what our family has done for years. You're going to continue to do it, and do it as well. And then also realize this: for the first 8 months or so, if you go out to eat, they're a joy because they stay in their car seat or whatever. They're like a paperweight. They don't really do much. It's kind of like, whatever. Like, at some point, they'll become mobile, and you'll be like, oh, wait, like, they're not as cool being in public as I once thought. Because that was the thing, too. Like, for the first 8 months, because we go out to dinner every Tuesday night. It's been a tradition that that's another tradition. We go out to sushi. And she doesn't eat sushi, but the wife and I eat sushi, or my wife doesn't now because of, everything. Because she can't eat raw fish. But that is the one thing, is like, you're like, oh, she's rocking, like, this baby's cool, like, you can take her anywhere. And then, like, once she learns to walk, she's gonna want to walk everywhere, and like, I walk, and you're like trying to keep her handled. And it's funny because Aditi Kinkabwala, whose son is the same age as my daughter, she was like the same way. Like, I thought this kid was so cool, like, just chill for the first, and then you're like, oh, they're a mobile human being now, and it changes things. So take advantage of those first 6 to 9 months where they're not mobile, and enjoy some stuff. But it really is, there really is it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, get the eating out, get those meals when you're out in the restaurant done in those first 6 months, and then take out from the rest of the way forward after that.
Pretty much.
We don't tend to go out a lot to any. We go to restaurants quite a bit. We don't go to bars that a lot. So hopefully that won't affect me too much. But I spend a lot of time doing these kind of shows, these kind of side projects, and maybe there could be some screaming in the back of some of them as we move forward, or some crying.
And oh my gosh, and don't worry about that. I know my wife freaks out. She's like, oh my God, there's a baby. Because I'll do like Facebook Lives as well, and do some other things. She's like, oh, I'm like, people don't care. Like, that's the one thing. Like, people don't care. And also, when your baby, like, first of all, the sweetest sound in the world, and this is the God's honest truth, and I think any parent will agree with me, the sweetest sound in the world is a baby crying in public. But that baby's not yours. And you're like, oh my God, thank God it's not mine. But you also have to realize that most people are parents, and most people feel bad for you. Like, that's the one thing I've noticed now, is like, whenever I'm out and there's a baby who's like fussing or acting up or doing anything, and I know, and the parents like mortified, like just like looking over the like, oh no, like, hey, my daughter's, she's 2 and blah blah, and like just letting them know, like, you become part of a club. To where you're like, yeah, I know what you're going through. Like, it's one of those things, and you'll get it. I know when I was probably in my 20s, I was like, calm that baby down. Like, what kind of parent are you? And then you're like, oh yeah, you sometimes eventually run out of control. Like, even the sweetest kid will just dead weight you and be like, no, I'm not walking. You're like, ugh. But it's still, but all of it's still overwhelmingly good.
overnight, that's going to happen to me. I'll be like, oh no, this kid, and then I'll be like, oh, my kid's doing that now. I just have to try and avoid that. You mentioned as well, and where is the kid? Where is the kid gone? I think what I'm going to try and do is get a little kind of gateways put along all the doors in the house, so they can't escape from that room. That is, I think, what my plan's going to be there, because I don't know if my heart could take just trying to figure out where they are at every single passing second of the time. And I guess, you've had a few things there. I don't know if they're going to be your advice for me. You had a couple of different tips there. Is there anything that, before you become a parent, you mightn't have thought of, but now obviously you are a parent, you think this was what I wish I knew at the time? Is there any one piece of, magic life-saving advice that you have for me?
I feel I've been laying it all out for you. No, I thought about that because, the magic words is that I know a lot. Here's the one thing. This is the one thing that I've been thinking about. And I remember when, we were expecting, the one thing, and you've probably heard this a lot, is the whole, like, they grow up so fast. Make sure you really enjoy it. And I was like, yeah, whatever. Like, shut up. I'm like, it's not that way. And then it turns out that it really is that way. Like, it really is that way, that they grow up so fast that even though it's hard to imagine, and I look back at photos of her when she was, a newborn, and you're like, oh my God, she looks different. Like, I can barely remember that. But you're like, my God, she's almost 3. It's what? It's the end of March right now, and she's going to be 3 in July. And just thinking about it and being like, my God, like, where did it all go? Like, everybody was right. They do grow up so fast. And I hear that once they get older, like once they start getting into school, that it goes even faster. So my advice to you would be to enjoy every single moment of it. Take as many pictures as possible. Because if I ever have, it's so ridiculous. Like my baby will drive me crazy sometimes. And like, I'll be so frustrated with her, and I'll be like, I gotta sit there. You gotta take your nap. Like, you're going down for your nap, and it's, that's usually like an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours of like, okay, I can sit here and enjoy myself. And instead of enjoying myself, I'm looking at photos of her. I'm like, this kid who was just driving me crazy 20 minutes ago, and I'm sitting here looking at photos like, oh, look at her. She's so adorable. Like, I just saw her. Like, I couldn't wait to put her in bed like 20 minutes ago. And now, so enjoy every moment. Realize you don't have all the answers. That you do realize that going through this as well is that, oh wow, my parents were human beings, and they just were going through. I mean, it was different for me because my 2 sisters are way older, so they were kind of like veterans at this whole thing. And I think that a lot of times they're like, yeah, whatever, you just like make things. Actually, you know what? It actually worked against me, because a lot of times you hear about the 3rd kid, or like whatever, the youngest child, of like, oh yeah, the parents are so lax, and they don't care, and you can do anything, and you can light the house on fire and whatever. But my 2 older sisters got in trouble and were such rebellious teenagers that they made my parents stricter. Like, I'm supposed to be, benefiting from lax parents, and I got stricter parents. But anyways, that's a story for another pod at some point. But just enjoy it. Like, that was my one thing. Like, I enjoy it. Realize you're not going to have all the answers. Take all the help when people do it. I know a lot of people. My wife does not like to let people help. And everybody, like, we live in a nice little community of people who want to babysit our child. I'm not like going out for a weekend, like going out for a meal.
Yeah.
And so if anybody ever offers you like, hey, like, hey, let us watch it. Because I know you were just saying, you'd like to go out to restaurants and enjoy a meal. Like, whenever somebody offers to say, hey, we'll watch your baby for a couple hours, it's a couple hours. Take advantage of it. I'm finally getting my wife to come around to that. I want you to jump out of the gate of being the person who will be able to take advantage of anybody who wants to do that for you. And if it's grandparents or neighbors or brothers or sisters or whoever it is, take advantage of that.
Nice advice. And, you mentioned there that you'll realize that you don't know everything. Well, the whole point, Adam, of me doing this show is to know everything. I have to know everything before we kick this all off. Only joking, obviously, but trying to figure out as much as I can. But you mentioned with the nieces and nephews, you kind of have that advantage. I have younger, like, cousins and that have been around, but never any really, really close relations, like you mentioned, with a niece or a nephew. But when we're looking through now the rest of the things, you mentioned you don't really miss going to the tavern as much as you used to. Is there anything that you do miss from before you had Beverly?
I mean, there are certain times when you think about big events, being able to, my wife's birthday was in February, picking up and going to Vegas for her birthday, like those kind of things. Like, yeah, obviously you're going to miss opportunities like that, but then realize that because we went through so much and it took us so long to finally go out and have our child, that like we can't be too upset about it, because a lot of people don't get that nice runway of like, God, we had a decade together of doing things like that. So it's not like I'm missing it, but there are times, just even when we're out to eat or whatever, and we've had somebody, watch the baby while we went out and just enjoyed ourselves for a second. Like, you do kind of miss that a little bit, but realize that those kind of things are fleeting. It would be nice, at times you're like, but ultimately you miss it, but you don't. It's kind of weird. But it's just like the spur of the moment. Actually, here's the thing that I miss. Being able to be like, oh, I need to go to the store, and then walking out of the house 20 seconds later. Like, that is the one thing I think that I miss, because it's such a like, oh, like, we got to go to the store. Like, okay, well, let me see. I got to grab the backpack. Come here. I got to get your shoes on. Where's your sweat? And like 20 minutes late, like I would have been to the store and back, and like you almost sit there. I would never do this, but you're like, gosh, would she even know I was gone? I would be no, but it's one of those things like that. I think that's it. That's what I meant. That's the one that I've cracked it. That's the one thing that I've missed the most, is that being able to leave at a scheduled time.
Yeah,
that is the one thing. But again, I think these are all things. But again, with all this stuff, this is stuff that you're going to miss when your child becomes 5 and is in school. Like, you'll be like, I can't believe, like, it's driving me crazy. Like, put her shoes on, like all this stuff. And then you'll be like, oh, man, I really miss that. I miss putting her to bed. Like, even, like I used to we would give the girl the bottle before she went to bed. And we would do this thing, and we would go out, and they're like, okay. So we'd, take her to bed, change her, read her a couple of books, and then have a bottle of milk. And I would sit there for like a half hour and hold her while she drank milk. And my wife would bottle feed her, put her in bed, but I'm like, I don't, see her as much. So I would bottle feed her and hold her for like an extra 20 minutes. And then, eventually it's like, you don't want them to have a bottle before bed and everything like that. And like, I literally miss that now. Like, so the things that you don't think that you miss or think you miss or whatever, you end up missing. But I don't know. I don't even remember what the question was. Things that I miss: leaving the house at a quick time, dropping everything, being like, I gotta go.
When you mentioned leaving the house really quick, really swiftly, and getting out of there, what I imagined, because my next question on the sheet is, which TV family are you most like? The vision I got in my head was Adam Rank running out of his kitchen like Fred Flintstone and getting into his car and just kicking his feet as fast as he could to get down to the shop.
That's pretty much it. Yeah, I think the Flintstones, that's a pretty good one. I thought about it, because I'm like, we're not quite to the Simpsons, because they have a couple of children and everything, and I'm like, we're actually, we're a nice family. And the Flintstones was one I was thinking of, because instead of the water buffalo hat, I have a Bullet Club hat. I don't go to the lodge as much, but yeah. And then when I'm done working, I like to slide out of the dinosaur and get back home as quickly as possible. And thankfully, my wife's only job is being a mother.
Okay.
And so I don't know. That. Yeah, that's the one thing too, is like, people are like, does your wife work? And I'm like, yes. Like, what does she do? I'm like, she's a mother.
Yeah.
So I don't know if your wife is taking outside employment or anything like that. Or whatever it is, but if she's a stay-at-home mom, make sure, and this goes for everybody, if your wife is a stay-at-home mom and people ask you if your wife works, the answer to that question is yes. She has the best job ever. She's a mother.
The toughest job in the world.
Yes. Yeah. And if she works outside of the house, does your wife work? Yes. She has 2 jobs. Yeah. Really? What does she do? oh, she is an accountant for a security firm, and she's also a mother. Like, remember that, and that'll be the best gift that you could give her.
And well, my wife, for the people listening, is actually a veterinarian, so she has a very busy job. So we'll see after the baby to see how we fit those two things together, because it's going to be a hell of a lot of work doing both of those, and it's going to be very interesting to see. But we'll worry about that when the time gets there. But we're talking about I mentioned that. I can't actually believe that I mentioned Fred Flintstone, and that was the one you're thinking of. Of all the cartoons in the entire world, I think I'm taking huge pride in getting that one. I must be getting some sort of mind reading powers, looking down the camera at you, Adam.
Well, they also had one girl. They had the one girl, and I know it's going to be changing. So perhaps if your family starts growing and we do this again, I'll have to change my answer. But I was like, because I was trying to think of like what TV family has mom, dad, and a girl. And I'm like, oh, Flintstones.
It's crazy the way that fell in. But I know when we talked on the OTI podcast talking about the NFL and fantasy football, the last time you were on, we had like a 10-minute conversation about Disney films. So the next question up is Disney films. And I know for a fact that Disney films and other films and cartoon-wise have fallen into a big part in your household. What is Beverly's favorite Disney film, or Pixar, whatever it is? We're not going to discriminate, but Disney would be my gallery of choice when went to Disney World as part of our honeymoon, and really fell in love with Mickey Mouse and the whole crew over there at that time.
Well, we're in luck because we live about 15 minutes from Disneyland, the original Disneyland. So we're always going to have an affinity, even though some of the other films from outside studios like Trolls. She loves Trolls. She loves. She started watching The Secret Life of Pets. And so she likes those movies, but now ultimately it comes back to the Disney films. And what's funny is that she goes in spurts and waves, and she'll lock into something for a while, and she'll get into it. It's kind of like music, I think with music, like you'll get into a band, like you'll get into like grooves where you're like, oh my God, I'm listening to Blink-182 a lot, for these couple of months, and then next thing it's Coldplay. Well, it's never Coldplay, but it's
U2,
Daft Punk or whatever. U2, yeah, like it's into something else. But not that you don't like it. It's not like you're over. It's not like you get over that. But it's like, oh, but you start circling around and doing other things. It's like for a couple of weeks there, for a couple of months there, strong into the Moana. She loved Moana. And it's funny that she loves The Rock and I love The Rock, but in different ways. Yeah, right? So I love it. And we'll sing that song like, you're welcome. But yeah, she still walks around. Awesome. She still walks around and does that. Like, Beverly, thank you. Oh, by the way, everybody listening to this pod, her kayfabe name is Ahsoka. But I'm letting you guys in behind the curtain. Like, this is like, it's like we're talking about a wrestling show. Yeah. And instead of saying Triple H, we're saying Paul. Like, oh, and Paul was doing this or whatever, like, this is like...
Dwayne. We're talking about Dwayne.
Yeah, Dwayne. We're talking about Phil Brooks, not CM Punk, like that type of thing. So everybody be cool with that. Although I will say this. I'm going to say this is a funny story. It might not be. But so Beverly's kayfabe name is Ahsoka, and it's a joke, and everybody loves it. So when we got pregnant with the boy, my wife's like, "What? We have no idea what to name him, because Beverly is named after my mother, and her middle name is Claire, so it's Beverly Claire, and that was my dad's name was actually Claire. It wasn't Clay, it was Claire. So Beverly Claire. So that one was really easy. So we had that one nailed and didn't even think about it. And had we had another girl, we had another one with Ruby for her grandmother and everything like that. So we started joking around, and she's like, well, what should we call the boy for right now? So we've been calling him Wedge, like Wedge Antilles. And it's really starting to gain momentum in that we're getting close to 20 weeks, and we haven't pivoted off that because she hated it at first. But Beverly loves it so much because she'll go up to the belly and be like, hi, Wedge. Hi, Wedge. And she'll do that. So we're kind of like, like this could actually happen.
Yeah. Just on the note of that, a very, very similar story. And I don't know how this came about. So we had my wife said, told me we're having a baby. She'd done it, kind of give me a card, all this here part of it. And then, so I don't know, somewhere around maybe last November, it started becoming Filbert was the name. We kind of picked the most ridiculous name. Sorry if there's any Filberts out listening to the show. We kind of picked this ridiculous name. But anyway, it came to Christmas. Everyone was talking about how's Filbert doing? How Filbert. It came to the stage where her mother actually bought some presents for the baby last Christmas and had a sack with the name Filbert across the top of it. I don't know what we're going to do. Apparently that can be taken off and re-stitched on with a different name, but it's funny, like you mentioned, it's kind of stuck the whole way through, and we're like, yeah, it's definitely not going to be the name, but at some point we might be like, well, it worked this far.
Oh, it's going to be the name. I'm really starting to. It's like I don't know how much you guys follow college basketball, but like there's a Cinderella, like there'll be a Cinderella in March Madness, that's going through, and you're like, oh, like eventually you start to believe that team could win. And Wedge was like a 14 seed, but now it's like, oh my gosh, this could really happen. Like there could really be a birth certificate with a kid named Wedge. And like, I don't know, it's kind of a sweet name. So I'm not mad at it. But we'll see.
We always say that famous people have the craziest names for their children. So Adam, you have quite a number with your comedy, with your NFL Network work.
Am I famous? That's the thing. Is like, am I famous enough to pull this off? That's really the question.
Hit us up in the YouTube comments. Let us know if Adam's famous. Do you agree with Wedge? Give it the thumbs up.
Do you like Wedge? Yes.
So when we're moving on, the last question I have for you is, we've talked about obviously the best things about having children. You've mentioned all the great stories, but I want to know, when you were young, we've talked about wrestling. You probably watched wrestling like I did from a very young age. Maybe that was what your life goal was. But when you were a child, what was that childhood dream for Adam Rank? And, you've done a lot of things in your life, but what was the dream at the start of it all? And have you got to it?
You know what? It's funny. Because I've always loved wrestling since I was a kid. And the one thing is I used to have bad allergies as a child. So I'd always have like a respiratory illness every year. And my mom would always go out and buy me, back in the day when people did magazines like Pro Wrestling Illustrated and all these things. And it was really something I thought like I could do that. Like and so my parents were like, no, that's not happening. You're not going to be a professional. You're not going to be a professional. Because you go through the whole thing like, I want to be a professional athlete. I want to do this. And you realize like, no, you're not quite that athletic. And I think at some point early on, I started to develop this desire to be a TV like news personality, to be somebody who is doing comedy. I used to love to watch stand-up comedy. There would be shows like A&E's Evening at the Improv and all these, Caroline's Comedy Hour and all this stuff. And then Comedy Central started, and you would be able to be exposed to all these comedians. And I was like, well, I think I could probably do something like that. And like, I was in a talent show in college, and that was my talent was doing a stand-up routine that I had written, and then writing and wanting to do broadcast television. I didn't realize too, like when I was like, I'd always wanted to do it, but I didn't know how to go about it. And I didn't really have any guidance because my two older sisters didn't go to college. My dad went straight into the Navy right out of he was in high school. So I never really understood like all this vocational stuff until I got into college and I started learning like, wait, I can major in radio, TV, film. Like this is amazing. So I think as far back, I'm pretty close. Like outside of being the quarterback for the Chicago Bears, I'm pretty close to nailing what I've always wanted to do with my life. So I feel pretty good about that.
That's awesome. Hitting those heights. And, when you reach those goals, I guess the thing is you always have to try and reach higher again. So we'll see what Adam Rank takes in the next couple of years. But being on the Learning to Dad show is probably at the pinnacle of what you ever could have expected.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I think one of my essays of like lifelong dreams, I think I might have written at one point that I wanted to be in a tag team with Hulk Hogan or Ric Flair. And to me, I'm like, that door's not closed. They're still alive. I know professional wrestlers. Like there's like that almost can still happen. Like I can't completely close the door on that, although I probably should, for their sake, not mine.
Could you? That is always the good. Talking about Hulk Hogan, what you going to do, brother? And then Adam Ranks, and I don't care what you're going to do. I'm going to beat you anyway because I'm younger, I'm fitter, and I'm ready to go. But we've had a lot of fun talk, Adam, obviously here as we talk through on the Learning to Dad.
I hope so. I feel like I rambled about a lot of nonsense. I had like things I wanted to talk about, but then I think once we just started, I just started going all over the place.
Hey, that's what we're here for. We're here to entertain the masses that listen to the show, that watch it on YouTube, and of course, hopefully, they're going to hit that subscribe button and come back for all the episodes. As I mentioned, it is closing in now on just under 2 weeks rather until the baby is due, and Adam obviously has a baby on the way. It's incredible throughout this series the amount of people who have have children that have come on the podcast and have either just had their second child or else are heading to have their second child. So it's a really interesting time here for all of us as we kind of develop. And if we do another year of this, maybe down the line when I'm starting to figure out what I'm doing, but maybe we have a second child in the way, I'll come back, get that advice from Adam and figure things out from there. But as I mentioned a moment ago, please do hit that subscribe button. Come back for the rest of the shows. There's a lot of stuff up on the channel, a lot of different interviews with different people as I get the advice of what I need to do. So hopefully, if you have any good advice for me or anything we discussed today, put it down in the comment section there and let us know your thoughts on what I need to do, what I should be doing. And of course, until we're back with another one, have a good one.